Okie dokie. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Haley Tiart, and this is Bermuda Youth Connect. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Sir John Swan, the independent candidate for constituency 10 in Smiths North. Before we get into our conversation, just want to share a really important reminder. The by-election for constituency 10 is scheduled for Wednesday, May 22nd, and it's just around the corner. So if you are a resident of C-10, I encourage you to go ahead and check in with the Bermuda Parliamentary Registry to ensure that you are registered to vote. This is your chance to shape the future of your community, and every vote counts. For those who have not already registered, even if you're not in constituency 10, there is no better time than to register now. Your voice really matters, and it's crucial to make it heard. So on May 22nd, please be sure to cast your ballot. Without further ado, Sir John Swan, thank you so much for joining me. Good morning. How are you doing?
Well, I'm honored to be on your program. I've heard so much about it, and it really sort of hits the top of the mark in terms of being able to connect with youth and how they think and what they want and how I can assist in their objectives. After all, the future belongs to them, people like yourself, who will mold the future for the next generation. I'm here, hopefully, to bring about some changes that will assist in that process taking place in an orderly, functioning, and also purposeful purpose. So I'm honored to be here on your program today.
Thank you so much for those kind words. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in. For those who may be unfamiliar with Sir John Swan, tell me a little bit about yourself, and if you have a show that you're currently watching that is great, you can share that with us.
Well, my background, as you know, I've come from Pembroke. As people say, I'm a pond dog. I come from Pembroke Marsh area and grew up here in Bermuda. Went to school here and then went abroad to school and came back in 1960. Worked for 2 years and I started my own company, which now is 62 years old, and was in my company for 3 years. And then I started to build 40% of the homes on the island and branched off in other industries, and then got involved with many of the directorships and functions of the major companies in Bermuda, and then found myself, before I knew it in 1972, entered politics. By 1982, became premier. And as you know, Bermuda, if you check, you'll find Bermuda was at one of its lowest points in its development in terms of business. It left, tourist business had left, and we didn't have the international business. And I fought for 6 years, 5.5 years actually, to bring about a treaty with the United States that produced the international business in Bermuda as we see it today. And I served and built many of the infrastructural projects in Bermuda that exist that makes Bermuda, would produce modern Bermuda, and did a massive amount of housing as I was doing my private life for the public. And in 1995, I left politics, returned back to my business, and today the office on Front Street is our premier headquarter office building with others around Hamilton. And I've always tried, my most important objective has always been what's best for Bermuda is my objective, what I can do. And I've never stepped away from that. I've done it overseas and I've done it locally. And I hope that I help to improve or maintain some of the standards or expectations that Bermudians have. I have been told by Bermudians that their expectations have been diminished, and that I'm not here today because I chose to be here. I'm here today because I received a lot of requests from a lot of people saying, we're not going the right direction. Please help us to get in the right direction. And when I heard enough of it coming from across the country, and even from some of the government and opposition members, I decided that, well, the only way I can do anything is to make myself available. Constituency 10 came along as an opportunity to do that. And I've appealed and communicated with Constituency 10 and said, this is not about me, this is about the future of Bermuda. And I'm asking you to support my objective of building a Bermuda of independent people, independent thinkers, independent doers, not committed to the party politics, but to the serving the people of Bermuda and trying to achieve and redo some of the things that need to be done to bring Bermuda back to modern Bermuda as I had it when I was premier.
Absolutely. Well, just in connection to what you just shared on your campaign flyer, it says that residents of C-10 should vote for you because it is a shift away from party politics. Can you tell me why that is so important at this point?
That is so important at this point, because if you look at the system, it is oscillated between party politics, one party or the other party, and everybody becomes loyal to the party and not to the public, not to the wishes of the people, but what will serve the good of the party and what will serve the good of the individual. I'm saying we need a system of independent members serving the good of the people. And so you take party politics out of it, and you put people in its place that served. And having sort of been there, served in politics, I know what it's like because you're pushed by all your colleagues and by different people to serve the party and not to serve and to serve themselves and not to serve the people. So
Mhm.
I'm asking constituency 10 to take a leap of faith. Don't stick with the traditional method because your leap of faith will determine the fate of Bermuda and the fact that if we don't have party politics in the same way we have it presently, it means the fact that more attention is paid to your desires and your objectives and getting things done. And also because of the type of people I want to bring along, hopefully enough of them that will help to remold Bermuda with some experience into a new direction for Bermuda.
So in 2012, there were 15 independent candidates. In 2017, there were five. And in 2020, there were four. And we also gained a new political party. None of the independents were elected, and none of the new political party members either. What message do you have for individuals that believe that it may be actually easier to create change with party support behind them, or even just creating a whole new party altogether?
Well, I think that we've had the party experience. I think the party experience not only in Bermuda, but in England and Canada and other parts in the Caribbean, where you had the Westminster system. And it's been a polarizing process. It's not been a collaborative process at all. One side so takes the wins and then they polarize themselves into a group and become very separatist process itself, almost become tribal in itself. And people begin to believe the fact that I must put my stamp on my party. And even though there's another alternative offered, I still must do that because that's what law that and you then select a leader that gets obsessed because the leader then thinks I'm in charge and I'm in charge of everything. And the end result, it becomes very myopic, very focused, very domineering, and the party's wishes, because you have the central committee then driving the party behind the scenes, or the leaders behind the scenes. If you don't do what I ask you to do, then I won't support you for getting reelected. What I'm suggesting is that we have individuals put themselves forward, assisted to get themselves reelected or get themselves elected to represent their constituency. Then you would have the government itself formed as a result of those independent members selecting a leader that will then pull together a leadership group. But more importantly is to have committees, a number of committees made up of the demographics of Bermuda, and also in terms, not of demographics in terms of population distribution, but also in terms of professional and also business. So we bring resources into the government.
Mhm.
We have now is they get elected, the resources that are outside of the elected group don't get used. And I think the resources should be pulled back into government. And ministers should have a responsibility to, to bring those groups together with other members of the party, to talk and then bring the business and the professional and the civil servants together so that they all sit around, decide on policies. Then those policies are then disseminated to the public as to what is it policy. So we end up with policy positions in different papers.
Mhm.
that then brought to the cabinet group to then look at and see how they can fit into legislation, because there are some technical legislative processes to be dealt with. And so there will be a toing and froing between the public and the process of doing things that the public says the country needs to do. Now, we know we can't do everything at one time, but the fact is it would be ongoing. We look at a master plan for Bermuda in terms of the infrastructure of Bermuda, in terms of the healthcare system of Bermuda. We definitely must look at the food and how food and medicine can be either brought under some kind of control or subsidized or something like that. We can't leave people out thinking they are not earning the type of money that other people are earning, but helping to drive up the prices of the goods and they don't get served. So there's going to be a lot of creative thinking in the process that I think is necessary if we want to build this new Bermuda that caters and looks after everybody and doesn't create this great divide that we have today.
Definitely. And I think as there is value in having independent candidates forming a government, I'm sure there's also some downsides as well. And I wanted to know what some of those that you're considering may be. Like, will it take longer for changes to happen because a lot of individuals trying to come together and find consensus that otherwise would have been present with their party relationships? How do you imagine those challenges that we see in the House right now with a supermajority will look like if independents were to run the government?
Well, what you do is you set some deadlines, timelines, deadlines, and you set some guidelines for people to operate with. You just don't let it just say it and let it just see what happens. You do that. When businesses, it is what we run more like a corporation, basically. I mean, basically like a big business, and the public are the shareholders, basically, and the committees and the ministers are the directors of the company, and the civil servants are the basically facilitators of the corporation itself. In other words, they're the ones that will play a major role in this process, which they're left out now. They'll be brought back into the thing and given the credit that they're due and recognition that nobody knows who the permanent secretary of this anything is today. They've been completely left out. So what we want to do is produce an inclusive process. I believe, as I believed when I became premier, if you raise the spirit of a country, and we were already demoralized because we had 22.5% inflation. We had people walking to the airport with suitcases because they couldn't get transportation to the airport. The country was just run down. I believe the fact that I did it then by raising the morale of the country, putting some optimism into people, letting people know that we could do something better than what we were, and people measured up to that. People rushed to get help down to the airport. It was just, but it's like when you have a hurricane, the country gets decimated. People, neighbors come out and they help each other. And, we have a crisis on our hands right now. But because we've lived with it for so long, we act like it doesn't exist. But we've seen our standard of living just slipping and slipping and slipping. Well, I want to raise that standard of living that everybody feels good about being back in Bermuda, and people say, I'm returning home now because, I'm going to finish my school education, come back home.
Mhm.
So part of it is not just a physical and legislative process. It also is the attitudinal process that's so essential that people feel as though something is happening and I want to be a part of it. I do know that 2 people have flown in from overseas. When they heard that I was doing this, they heard about the town hall meeting on Monday night. It was such a great success. That one person said, I'm coming home because I want to be there when that election occurs. Now, I'm sure that's what I heard, but I'm sure other people are coming home. So this is the cup match of politics that we should all try to make it a success. And whatever the decision is, we should learn to live with it. My hope is that this is the new beginnings for Bermuda, that we all will participate in it. We will feel as though that we're all a part of it, And at the end of the day, we will all lift Bermuda up together. Once we all hold hands to lift Bermuda up, both the international business, the working class individuals that help to the superstructure that helps to keep this country going, the civil servants, the government members who will interact with the public, and then the outside world, which we used to have, whether it was under Ronald Reagan or George Bush or Maggie Thatcher, they all came here and wanted to take and make sure Bermuda was okay. We don't want to see a Bermuda that has a closed down government house collapsing and a deputy governor's residence collapsing. And you have the House of Parliament meeting in an office building because nobody's fixed it up or kept it up. The Senate is meeting in the same office building. This is not the Bermuda that the outside world wants to see. Because, you know, we're different. We're stuck here in the North Atlantic. We're the only place by itself. The Caribbean is 1,200 miles that way. The United States is 700 miles that way. So there is no, like, we're by ourselves. We're in focus at all times. And we're supposed to be a symbol of decency, common sense, and really collective objectivity. And that's all I'm saying. I would like to see that restored and restored fast, particularly with the changing world, with AI coming in and with other forms of technology and robotics and 3D printing, and where our young people in education are not forced to do things they don't want to do. Education now should be where young people's innate interest is built around education so that they then can see the spirit of a country that they grew up with and enjoy education as though it is a part of what Bermuda really is becoming. We're not America, we're not United Kingdom or anywhere else. We're Bermuda. And I think we have just gotten off a track and we're so busy clashing at the top that the bottom is neglected. It's like in a family. If the husband and wife are clashing, the children suffer. And that's exactly what's happening to us. The husband and wife are having disagreements and everything else, and the children don't know where they're going. I want to have it back so that the parents have one commitment to nurture those children, nurture their relationship, and therefore we nurture the country itself.
It sounds great. I have just to pull a thread there on why this moment. Why do you think that this by-election or even just you as an individual are trying to create this catalyst for change? And why is this such a transformative movement, this election, this by-election?
Well, it's been coming for a while. People have been unhappy with it. I think, you know, I always say to people, in fact, you've heard me on the air and you've heard me on public speaking. One of my preambles to my speaking is, I love Bermuda and I love its people. So my heart is in Bermuda and my heart is with its people. But I've seen a lot of hurting hearts. People feel as though that somehow the other Bermuda is not doing its justice to its people. And that's at all levels, whether it's professional level, doctors are being threatened by, not, they should do this, they should do this, they can't do this, they can't do that. People are feeling as though they're left out of decision making, feeling as though they're not getting the care that they need to get. If we talk about people having to make a choice between medicine and food on the table, all these things make me hurt. And then when I walk the streets of Hamilton and go other parts of Hamilton, I hear people say to me, Sir John, something has to be done about this situation. It's intolerable. When my children come back home because they can't find somewhere to stay and they have to bring their children, so it's three generations in one household, and you know our house has never been that big. So I've heard a lot of hurting, and I've been very sensitive to that. So when Mr. Donkey stepped down as member for constituency 10, somehow the other light switch went off. I think God spoke to me. I really believe he spoke. He said, John, your mission is not finished yet. Go and do it. And so after thinking about it and listening, I said to myself, they will say I'm either too old, I shouldn't be involved, I had my turn in politics. But I've had all that experience. Why don't I use it to make Bermuda better? So after thinking about it, and really was a very inner thought process at first. And then when I started talking to people outside of myself, I couldn't find anybody that disagreed with me. So I felt as though maybe it's a message that's being sent to me very loud and clear. And as a reading disabled individual, as a person that had difficulty in school because I'm dyslexic, and when I learned to listen to people, I, I was able to overcome all those problems.
Mhm.
And so I said to myself, I've listened. I've learned to listen. I've listened to learn. Why can't I listen now and learn that there is something else I need to do? And that's when I came to the conclusion. It's time for me now to step up and do what God Almighty has said. I'm calling on you. If you want to help your people, you take the responsibility and don't be afraid of the consequences. And so I'm not here for myself. I'm here for all of Bermuda. And I'm asking constituency 10 to support that process. And if we do, all I can say to you, I promise you, I will do my best to serve all of the country, black and white, rich and poor, foreign, local, whatever it is. They will be our constituent. Anybody living here has a right to be here because our laws allow them to be here. Anybody living here because they were born here and have a right by citizenship to be here. I want to pull them together. It's been too much of a divide. We've had politics by race, we've had politics by identification of origins, and I want to stop all that and have politics about what's in the best interest of Bermuda. And I can only do that, thank God, if I listen to him and do my job and don't be afraid of the consequences.
Absolutely. And I want to go to talk briefly about your history and politics, and especially your connection to the UBP. The OBA in this election period has received a lot of backlash for its connection to the UBP. And as Bermuda's longest serving premier under the UBP, I wanted to know, how do you respond to people that may feel like your candidacy is not representative of a path towards a brighter future for Bermuda, but more so reminiscent of the past?
Well, I mean, we all have past experiences. We all are part of a past. That doesn't mean that we have to be locked into the past.
Yep.
I served the UBP. I didn't want to be in politics. I was pushed into politics from the very beginning. I could have gone and joined the PLP or I could have joined the UBP. I was on the sidelines involved with a whole lot of business and activity and so forth, called by the leader of the country at the time who helped me build the building that was on Victoria, which I still own today. And when I looked at the things I was trying to do is to have an inclusive Bermuda, I felt as though that if I got involved with the UBP, I could help that process.
Mhm.
And so I have not changed my position. When I joined the UBP, I said to the business community, who was always Front Street boys governing everything, I said, the party's over. You used to dictating to premiers. I'm one premier will not be dictated to. I will set my agenda. When I try to do the treaty, they said, no, you can't do that. We want to do it because we're more connected than you are. And I said to them, you're mistaken. I will be doing the treaty. And I invited them to the cabinet office and said, all those who are not prepared to support me, please leave this room now. I noticed that nobody got up and left because they knew that we needed the treaty, but they also probably occurred to them that they needed leadership. And even though I had they call the people's part, 5 people in my cabinet trying to dislodge me almost from the time beginning of my premiership, I never fired one of them. I don't believe in all this reprisal stuff and all this anger. I let them have their voice. I let them take their positions and so forth. And the end result is I survived for 13 and a half years. And we got a lot of, my job was to serve Bermuda and not to be poured into the politics or conflict. And
Absolutely.
so when I came out of politics, I realized one thing: do what you started to do in the first place. It's continue to serve Bermuda, continue to want to be a part of everybody's life. So I decided that I was going to maintain, go into a mutual position and serve the country rather than trying to preserve the UBP or
Mhm.
oppose the PLP. I did that. I think that I served that well as far as I know. People respected it and so forth.
Mhm.
I never really got out of politics because when I saw something going wrong, I stepped in and tried to sort of prevent it from going wrong. I gave opinions and so forth. So it isn't that I've taken sides. It is just that I've been there for Bermuda as a whole. And
Mhm.
that's all I'm here for now is Bermuda as a whole. I don't intend to be around getting elected, maybe getting help to form a new government, a new form of government as independent members,
Mhm.
trying to find people who can do the job that's we committed ourselves to do and bow out of it very fast. So it's not about me looking to preserve John Swan as premier or so forth. When the job is done, I move on. And I've always done that, even in business. Every 10 years, I've changed my business model to reflect what is the contemporary model of today. I started in little cottages, I went big industries, business, and everything else. I then got involved with politics, came back out again, restructured the business again, and now I'm in big buildings. So I've been through this cycle and I'm trying to get Bermuda through this cycle. We've stayed stagnant for so long now of bitter conflict politics, race politics, economic deterioration, with pretending that we're doing something when we're not doing something. So let's take the pretense out. Let's call it like it is. Let's make everybody feel as though they got a part in the process. If they don't want the truth, but they will have to have it, get used to it, and try to help to solve the problems that the truth brings to them. That's all I propose to do. And I think we'll have a better Bermuda and try to deal with this debt and deterioration that's happened and this general sort of feeling that, Bermuda is not the Bermuda that we used to have and try to bring it back into focus again. That's all. So that's what I'm doing. So you can take me with you, UBP, all you want. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And, I think I've done a lot to demonstrate that I'm not a UBP in 30 years.
Mhm. Definitely. Well, I want to pivot to our last couple of questions. I know in your last interview with the Royal Gazette, you talked a bit about a cultural shift that's needed within Bermuda, and I definitely agree. I think Bermuda, without a doubt, needs a cultural shift to change the political landscape and create room for people to feel empowered to run as independents. And I wanted to get your opinion on what role you think that public forums like our pre-election youth forum in 2020, where we interviewed the leaders of the political parties and representatives from each party as well, or even individual constituency debates with candidates. What role does that play in shifting that political culture?
Well, assuming that the people of Bermuda decide to um, elect me, or Constituency 10 decide to elect me on the 22nd, the first thing I would do is to um, set up a system by which we put together a group of candidates for 35 constituencies throughout the island. The next thing I would do is of that group is to set up so we start the communication with each the constituents of those areas with those candidates, and people get familiar with them and get familiar. I don't know when the premier will call an election, but when an election is called, let's say we won, we would then have those independent members pick a leader. I might not be the person. I might see somebody else that can do the job. And that's fine with me. But the job would be to bring in the politicians, the civil servants, members of the public, both from the business and the private sector, into forums to discuss the various issues, whether it's infrastructure areas, whether it's education, whether it is health. So you bring in it's young people who are emerging and professionals who have already and caused a dialogue to take place with everybody. Once that's done, and they are able to, these committees are able to, and we did the same thing up at the Ocean View Golf the other night. We had tables, people of 8, but only they had a discussion, but only one person spoke. Once they all agreed, one person spoke on their behalf. And we had 14 tables. So we had 14 different groups of people discussing things. And that's what started the stimulation, and the energy level just went up, because all of a sudden you had people that walked in, didn't know each other, got to address the issue, and was able to have a dialogue. Well, we propose then we take that back to the public and say, this is what's been done. It then goes to the ministers who bring it to the smaller group, the cabinet. And the cabinet itself then is able to look at it and say, yes, let's see how it now fits into the legislative capacity. Not saying that we don't approve, disapprove, or disapprove of it. Let's see whether we have number one, do we have the finances to do it? Number two, we get the legislative program to get it done itself, and we have the capacity. So we have the finance, the capacity to do it in terms of manpower. We know Bermuda has a manpower problem. So we have to be honest with the Bermuda public and say, if we want to do 6 or 7 projects, and we can't do them all at one time because we don't have the means, so let's prioritize with those projects. So the public starts saying, okay, that project is being done. This project needs to be done. For instance, we know that we should be looking at a plan that encompasses on infrastructure-wise in terms of activity for Bermuda, going from Dockyard to St. George's. Where will our docks eventually end up? Where will our cruise ship industry end up being other than a dockyard itself? How would the causeway be built to make sure that it can sustain the climate change and the weather conditions that make sure that our airport functions? Because if we have problems with ships coming to Bermuda because of things that might happen on the East Coast of the United States, we have to fly things in. There's no sense flying me if we've lost the causeway. I've got a plan to take how to do that causeway, not a bridge, how to do that causeway at a much, much reduced price, which should have been done some time ago. These are the types of things. So we're gonna have some big picture issues. Healthcare. We want to do a study. We haven't had a census. We keep talking about people leaving Bermuda. We keep talking about a manpower shortage. We should do a demographic study of Bermuda in terms of numerical evaluation. Number one, who's in Bermuda? Where are they? What type of income that they have? So we can start saying, these are the categories of things that we need to correct. And we too have to, because my suspicion is that a lot of people at the top with good salaries and everything else, and inflation doesn't affect them. But those people at the lower end, inflation does affect them because their income can't sustain themselves with inflation. There's a lot of conjecture out there, but there's no facts. We should be able to do the facts. And so we set those things up. And then when we want to do opinion, we should set up an electronic opinion system. In other words, we can do a census or mini census electronically nowadays. So using technology to get that done. So there's going to be a lot of interaction between the public and the process. And I say the process meaning those people who fit into the process itself, and those people who want to participate in the process, so that there's information flowing backwards and forward in the process. So you would have that process taking place. It's not just about legislation. It is about knowledge, prioritization, facilitation, and being able to make sure that it has the effect that it was intended to take place. We don't see that happening, and the public needs to have that process there. And so every day you can wake up in the morning, you can look at the data process that's being presented to you, the information process presented to you, and you start seeing, because corporations do it every day. My company meets twice a week on Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings. What we talk about the affairs of the company as to what it's doing, how it's, what, who would put our priorities, have we accomplished what we intended to accomplish?
Mhm.
And so, you know, and then we can disseminate that to our service providers and to our tenants. And we do the same thing as though you're running a corporation that has, and the shareholders, keep in mind, the shareholders are Bermudians. People who put you in office, they're your shareholders. But our shareholders are bigger than that. Our shareholders are people who put you in office, but guess what? Our shareholders also, all these major corporations that propped our economy up. You got to embrace them into the process. You can't have a polarized political system that says, you give me all the money, but you can't participate in the process. This is going to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. So it's to bring them into the fold, use their ideas, and possibly use their capital to help to build new Bermuda, because if they're involved, they will then try to cede their capital to us to help to make what we consider to be a real inclusive Bermuda part of the process. So that's how we will get it done.
Definitely. And we're at our time. I just want to leave you with one more question. We ask all of our other interviewees. If you could make one social law that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
If I had to make one social rule that we have to follow,
Yes.
a trust in God, number one, trust in self, number two, build a faith in the human endeavor, number three, and number four, make a society that everybody feels as though they're part of it and not excluded from it, which means everybody has a part to play and everybody has a benefit and everybody has a responsibility. That's when you find out that you've done due justice, not just to one group or another group, but to all. And the political process is supposed to achieve that. It's a process by the people, for the people, and of the people. And let us, as human beings, recognize that nobody should be above that or below that, but a part of that, that we all can be inclusive in its endeavor to achieve the human endeavor that makes everybody feel as though they're part of something worth being. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sir John Swan. It was great speaking to you. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This was Bermuda Youth Connect, and want to again encourage everyone to go and vote at the polls on May 22nd if you are a resident of constituency 10 in Smiths North. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Be an agent of change. Give us a
Yeah.
chance.